In this video, we're going to look at how we can make our data more self-documenting by applying trend-based conditional formats. A conditional format is where Excel will make a cell look different based on some criteria. With the trend-based conditional formats, it compares a data set against itself and basically ranks all the values in that data and applies formatting accordingly. In this case scenario, Rowan has been given data on waste management in Australian states and asked to make it easy for people to quickly spot trends and anomalies. So for example, we're going to scroll down to our resource and recovery and recycling rates, and Rowan would like to make it very obvious where we're producing large amounts of landfill. So we're going to select the data from E30 down to E37, and then we're going to come up to our Home tab in our ribbon and click Conditional Formatting. The first two options are value-based conditional formats, which we'll look at in the next video. What we're going to be focusing on are these three, which are our trend-based, and we'll start with the color scale. Now, Rowan wants where we have a high level of landfill for it to show in red, going through orange, yellow, and green for the lower values. So to achieve that, we're going to go for the red, yellow, green color scale. Then as you hover over the different options, you'll see you can choose whichever one suits your data. I'm just going to click to apply. Really easy. And you're not limited to just a column or just a row. You can apply to an entire block of data. So let's do the same for resource recovery rates by region. I'm going to click on C18 and drag down to H25. Again, come to conditional formats. Resource recovery rates, we want the high resource recovery rates this time to be green. So we're going to come to color scales, and we're going to choose the first option this time. And there's our data nicely formatted. The potential downsides with the color scales is they are quite busy, and if you don't provide a key, it might not be totally intuitive. So let's have a look now at how we can remove a conditional format, and then we'll apply one that might be a little better for this data. So I'm going to come back to conditional formatting, and this time I'm going to come down to clear rules, and you'll see you have the option to clear from the selected cells or from the entire sheet. We want to clear from selected cells. Easy come, easy go. All right, still with your data selected, we're going to come back to conditional formatting, and this time we're going to have a look at the data bars, hover over the different options. I'm going to go for the light blue, but you can choose any color you like. And you can see it's almost like applying a chart. The larger values, the bar is almost the whole way across the cell, whereas the smaller values, you get a much smaller bar. Now, the way it works with all the trend-based formats is by default, it starts with the lowest value as the bottom of the set and the highest value at the top of the set. In a moment, we will look at actually how you can modify that. But for this one, it's looking great. So we're just going to left align the text and maybe make it a size 9. All right, one more example we're going to look at, which is icon sets. We can apply the icon sets to the data in the cell, but in this particular example, we'd actually like to put it in a separate cell. So can I ask you to click into J18, type equals, and click onto your cumulative growth rate in I18, and press enter, and then just click back and double click your fill handle to copy that down. Then with your data still selected, we're going to come up to conditional formatting and come to icon sets. The icon sets allow you to categorize your data really into 3, 4, or 5 categories. And the category we'd like to use is the 3 triangles. So we're going to click on that to apply it. Don't worry about the hashes because we're going to get rid of those in a moment. But once again, you can see that it's taken the top third, made those green triangles, the middle third has got the yellow lines, and the bottom third, because that value is quite a lot lower than the others, has got the red triangle. But in this case, it's not what we want at all. We would like all of our positive growth rates to have a green triangle and our negative ones to have a red triangle, and if there's been no change, to see the yellow line. So we're now going to look at how we can actually customize our conditional format. Again, make sure you've got them selected, come back to conditional formatting, and we're now going to choose Manage Rules right at the bottom. By default, you will see the rules applying to the current selection, but if you come up to where it says Current Selection, you can actually switch to this worksheet and see all the rules in your worksheet, and from here you can delete rules you don't want or edit rules. We're going to edit the icon set rule, so we're going to click on it and then click Edit Rule. We could switch it out for a completely different trend-based format if we wanted, and you can mix and match the icons, but you have to select from the icons provided. You can also change the boundaries. So you can see at the moment it's making the top 33% green. We actually want all the positive numbers to be green, so we're going to switch percent to number, and then we're going to say greater than 0, so it doesn't include 0. Then the second group, we're going to make that number as well, and we're going to say greater than or equal to 0. Now, that seems a bit odd, but the ones that are greater than 0 are already getting a green triangle. So this will only pick up the equal to 0, and everything else will get a red triangle. One more thing, we want to show icons only, so put a tick in that box, and we're going to say OK. And at this point, you don't have to press apply unless you want to do something else in this dialog. You can just click OK. And there are icons clearly showing where there's been an increase or a decrease in our cumulative growth rate. So we've looked at 3 types of trend-based conditional formats. In the next video, we're going to have a look at value-based conditional formatting. In this video, we're going to look at how we can use value-based conditional formatting to highlight specific criteria in our worksheets. For example, Rowan would like to identify the 5 lowest incidents of core waste production. We're going to select the data, come to conditional formatting, and come to top-bottom rules. These basically allow us to select a top or bottom band within our data. We want the bottom 10 items, but we're not locked into 10. We're going to actually make that 5. By default, it shows as red fill with dark red text, but there are other presets you can choose from, and if you don't like any of them, you can come to custom format and define your own. We're just going to go for a green fill and say OK. Very easy to apply, and if our data changes, so if I make this 0, you'll see the conditional formatting immediately responds. I'm going to undo that change, Control Z, and we're back. Now, one problem that can creep into our data that can be a real issue is duplicate values. Conditional formatting can help us identify any duplicates. So for example, I'm going to select my states or territories, and I'm going to come to conditional formatting, come to highlight cell rules, and here you'll see you get a really rich set of options. We're going to click on duplicate values near the bottom, and oh dear, we do have duplicates. That could have been really embarrassing. I'm going to select from B10 all the way to J10, because that's my duplicate, and I'm just going to press delete. Easy fix. Now let's look at something even more specific. So I'm going to scroll down. Rowan wants to identify all the recycling rates that are below 48%. So with selecting our recycling data, come to conditional formatting, come to highlight cell rules, we're going to choose less than and type 48% and click enter to apply. So we have quite a lot of options there, and they're very quick and easy to apply. There is one potential downside with the one we've just used. If Rowan decided he wanted to see all the recycling rates below 50%, he would need to go and change the conditional formatting. Now, in this particular case, he's absolutely certain it'll always be 48%, so it's not a concern. But sometimes we want the conditional formatting rule to be based on a value that's in our worksheet. This, first of all, documents it better, but also makes it far more interactive. So here's an interesting example. Rowan has included a map in the data and a drop-down list showing all the states and territories. You may recall from the previous course, we can create a drop-down list using data validation. If he selects a different state, he wants the cells behind the map to highlight in a different color. So you'll see we've now highlighted the Northern Territories region. He wants to do this using conditional formatting. Let's start by moving our map out of the way so we can actually see the cells behind. We've actually labeled each of the cells. What our conditional formatting needs to do is to check if the label above the cell we want to highlight is equal to the selection, then we're going to change the color. But for this, we're actually going to need a formula. So make sure you've got O11 selected, come up to conditional formatting, and we're going to come down to new rule. The new rule dialog gives us complete creative control over our conditional formatting. So we could define our own 2-color scale, we could define our own data bar, but what we're most interested in here is using a formula. So we're going to click use a formula, and then we're going to click into the formula bar. Now all formulas begin with an equals, so we're going to type equals, and then we're going to select O10. We want to check if this cell contains the same value as K1, but you'll notice it's put an absolute cell reference in, and we don't want that because in a moment we're going to copy this format to the other cells. So I'm just going to press F4 3 times to turn that off. And now I'm going to type my equals, and I'm going to check if this cell is equal to K1. And here we do want the absolute cell reference. We don't get a default format, so we're going to click our Format button, and you can change your number format, font, border, or fill, or all of the above. We're going to make it any color in the top row, sticking with our color palette, and we're going to say OK, and OK again. And it has now changed. I don't really want to repeat that 7 times though, and I don't have to. You can copy conditional formatting. And you can do it using conventional copy-paste methods, but there's a really efficient option called the Format Painter. So making sure you've still got O11 selected, we're going to come up to Format Painter. One click gives you one copy. Double click gives you multiple copies. So we're going to double click. And when you bring your cursor back into the workbook, you should see a paintbrush attached. Now we're going to apply it to our Queensland cell, so that's going to be P11. And it doesn't change because this value is still NT, but we'll check it very shortly. Now Western Australia actually straddles two cells, so we're going to click on N15 and then drag up to N14. Similar for South Australia, and just complete the rest. When you're done, click to turn the Format Painter off or press Escape. Now let's put our map back into place, just making sure that the black circles line up nicely with the white circles, and you can use your arrow keys to budge it into position if you need to. Let's go and test it. So coming back to our drop down, I'm going to change NT to WA. That worked very nicely. Let's try another one. Tasmania. Fantastic. So we've looked at quite a few options for adding conditional formatting. There's some great efficient built-in options, but if you want real creative control, you can add your own conditional format using a rule. In the next video, we're going to look at how we can apply conditional formatting to an entire row, and we're also going to introduce macros to make our workbooks even more interactive and automated.